You are listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCC LP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Hi, this is Tony Collins, and welcome to the Legal Connection Show. We're here today with uh, Shiva Gill, who's my special guest, who specializes in immigration law. Cheryl will be joining us shortly. The Legal Connection Show can be heard on FM 104.5 and FM 106.1 on your radio. We're also on irlonestar.com on the internet. You can also Facebook us with questions. Our Facebook account is the Legal Connection Show .com. Actually, is our Legal Connection site for Facebook. So you can visit us. We have a podcast. We're also on the local TV show. I don't know when that airs, but at any rate, today our special guest is Shiva Gill. She is an immigration attorney, and she's going to tell us a little bit about herself, and we're going to answer all of the questions that we have about immigration law that's been really in the news quite a bit lately. And it's sort of that no man's land that if you don't do immigration law, you don't know enough about, and we're going to clear up all those things those need to know things. Okay, Shiva, tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Tony. First, I want to apologize. I'm getting over the flu that was going around, so I have a cough that I don't seem to be able to shake off. Before I tell you a little bit about myself, I want to explain that immigration law has two sides. There are people who are outside the United States wanting to come in, and then there are people who are already here that for some reason or another are facing deportation and they have to leave the United States. So that's the area of law that I specialize in. I specialize in deportation defense, where people can face expulsion from this country for reasons of crime or visa violations or numerous other reasons. So I am a licensed attorney. 75% of our clients are Spanish speakers. And it's always really humbling to me because I don't speak good Spanish. My Spanish is actually very bad.
That is so interesting. How do you survive in a profession in this area of the country and not speak Spanish to be able to communicate with them? Do you have an interpreter or?
Well, yes, everybody in my office, we have 3 legal assistants and one other half an attorney. She works for me half a day. They're all perfectly bilingual.
Half an attorney.
And, when you ask me about how I survive, a lot of my business comes from when somebody's apprehended by the county.
Right.
For any reason. It could be
or the state, actually, right?
It could be the state.
Uh-huh.
It could be the
Is it the county constables or the deputies or somebody's coming after them because they have a warrant or because somebody has sent an individual has sent them or both?
Well, it could be something as simple as a routine traffic stop.
Okay.
Your broken taillight is broken. You were changing lanes without signaling. You have an
Well,
expired
that's surprising
registration.
to me because I didn't think that in a sanctuary city, and Harris County and Houston are.
We're really not.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
I mean, it's not a sanctuary city. So when you get pulled over by a cop and he says, "May I see your driver's license, please?"
Mhm.
And if you fail to produce it,
Mm-hmm.
that is failure to ID.
Right.
But if you produce an expired driver's license or a matricula or some other form of
Mhm.
identification, and the cop runs it through and realizes that you're here without documentation, he will take you in.
Is that right?
And in Harris County, they have ICE officers in the county jail.
Now, I know that because and correct me if I'm wrong, but my clients have told me that particularly the ones that are like the DACA type dreamer people that speak English and have been here all their lives, they can get around that ICE hold, even if there's the ICE um, deputy or the professionals that are there to apprehend them as they're leaving the jail because there's an ICE hold. They said you can get around them about 10% of the time by just sort of acting casual and calm and walking out with the rest of the group that's being released for whatever reason they've been released from jail. Is that true or
To be honest, the only time I've heard of people kind of getting out of there most of the time
when they have an ICE hold?
when they have an so yeah, if you have an ICE hold, Harris County cannot release you. So
Right.
even if you post a bond,
Uh-huh.
then Harris County has to let you go.
Right.
So if you are a citizen or a lawful permanent resident,
Mm-hmm.
or even if you have DACA but you don't have a deportable crime.
Right.
So in other words, having so a person who has DACA will
Mhm.
most likely have a valid driver license.
Right. Mhm.
Okay. So which means they're not going to be held. They're going to be released.
Right. Which is another kind of weird thing. How does a DACA person, what does DACA stand for?
So DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals.
Okay. How would they get a driver's license if they were not born here and not citizens?
The driver license program is only connected to somebody who has lawful status.
Uh-huh.
So you can be here on a student visa
Oh, we get a driver's
and you
license.
can get a driver's license.
Okay.
If you are, if you have DACA,
Uh-huh.
that means that somebody has authorized you to stay.
Okay.
So DACA is deferred action, which
Uh-huh.
means someday we're going to deport you,
Uh-huh.
but we're going to defer it.
Right.
So that's deferred action.
Okay.
But-
And I want to go back real quick because this is something that I get asked all the time. What are the, I guess, prerequisites or qualifications to be a DACA recipient?
Okay, so right now you can only renew DACA. You
Mhm.
cannot file a new application
Really?
because of all, when President Trump canceled the DACA program,
Okay.
he canceled it completely for everyone.
Okay.
And there was a lot of litigation on this subject,
Mm-hmm.
at which point the decision as it stands now is that for the dreamers, as they're called, if you already have DACA status,
Mm-hmm.
you can continue to renew it.
Okay.
But in terms of filing for new DACA status, it has been nixed.
And when did DACA come about? Was that with Reagan or before that?
No, it was President Obama who started the DACA program.
Thank you. Okay, that's right.
And the requirements at that time were, I think he started it, I want to say in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And the requirements were you had to have entered when you were under 16.
Mm-hmm.
You had to be under 31. So you had to be 30.
Right. Okay. There's
on-
that age group in there because it shows that you probably came after the amnesty for Reagan in '86.
Oh, yeah, there was another amnesty after Reagan.
Okay.
So Reagan's
Oh.
amnesty was in the 80s.
Yeah.
84, I want to say.
Yeah, it wasn't '86.
And
it
then
was-
Clinton amnesty came in 96.
Oh, okay. Man, all the stuff I didn't know. Okay.
Right.
So anyway, but the age you had to be
So
under
you had to be
16.
under 16. You had to be you had to be 30 or
under 30 or under. Okay.
30 or under.
Okay.
You had to either be in school or have a high school diploma,
Okay.
and you had to have good moral character.
Okay. Got it.
So nowadays the people who are losing DACA,
Mm-hmm.
so they're unable to renew it because they have committed a infraction which violates the good moral
Do they have
character.
to renew it every year, or how does that work?
It can be renewed every 2 years now.
Is it like a little card or something like?
It looks exactly like it's an employment authorization document.
Oh, okay.
So it's a work permit, but has your picture and your
Okay.
alien number and your date of birth.
And is that something that their parents would go to you to help them get, or could they apply for it on their own at that time? Or
Both. So if they
Okay.
were under 18, they would come in with a parent.
Mhm,
So they were still in high school.
mhm.
But now, the ones that come. So the day DACA went into effect,
Uh-huh.
we had something like 300 people that showed up at our door.
Okay.
And we had to just say, go wait on the street because we
Right.
didn't even have
I
room.
remember when DACA came about, a lot of my clients they kept saying we're dreamers, and I'm like, I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm a dreamer too. But I didn't know what they were talking about, except for I knew that somehow they would have a means of staying here.
Yeah, so the word dream actually is an acronym for something.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't tell you what
Right,
it is
right,
at
right,
this
right.
moment
Uh-huh.
in time. So in the beginning, the Dream Act, as it was introduced,
Uh-huh.
was meant to give these people full legal status,
Okay.
but it never,
I remember
passed.
there was a fight in Congress over it, and all of my, ooh, I would all many, not because all my clients weren't DACA or Spanish, but the ones that were like, let's make sure this administration stays, and with kids, they were just panicking over it, and
Yeah,
because we work together to the extent that. We share some clients.
yeah,
And you will give me some that I've got to make sure they've got a clean record, which we're going to get to in a minute.
yeah,
I didn't understand really why it was that important, except for always a challenge. And
yeah.
I knew that I could keep the clients that you needed. There was no doubt in my
And you
mind
did.
with enough
Yeah.
work and prayer. I was going to make sure they had a clean record.
Well, and Tony, you saw the clients we've shared. I
Mhm.
mean, they could be your kids, they could be my kids, they could be
Yes,
the kids next door.
so sweet.
And
Uh-huh.
for example, if you these days, if you pick up a DWI,
Hmm.
it's almost the equivalent of taking a gun and shooting someone.
Yes.
That's how serious
Yes.
a DWI
Yes,
is.
yeah, I know because I've watched my friends. They're your friends once they're your clients because you get to know them really well.
Yeah.
And you've always given me such great clients. They're just that they really are just kids that are very, very sweet. They're usually in between 16 and maybe 25, and they get in some trouble, like most kids that age
Yeah.
kind of do. Well, not most, but many, but very innocent. And it's their life. If they get this is not if we don't get their cases dismissed, their life is going to be completely upside down because they don't have relatives in the other country that they
Well,
may be
they're
deported
going
to.
to end up in a country which they've never visited or seen since they were infants, or
Yeah, that's their
and
fears. We don't even speak that language.
and that's one reason the people I send to you are the
Mhm.
ones that I also really care
Yeah,
about, and I
and
want
they're
them
so
to have.
sweet.
Yeah,
And I will say that I've kept in touch with some of them, and they have worked their way legally to becoming citizens, maybe through your help or whatever the process is, which we'll get into. But I have some clients that have picked up DWIs after the fact, and they are picked up, and they want to just get it over with because they really were drunk. It's like almost like we're Russian or whatever, but they're not Russian. They're Hispanic, and it's okay to drink and drive because we do that in our country. And it's like you cannot do that here. And instead of doing what I tell them to do, which is fight this to the dog, we don't want to say we're just going to do deferred. They do the deferred, and they get deported. And the next thing I'm hearing from them, they're calling me from ICE at that 866 number, whatever the number is, saying, what are you going to do to help me? And I'm like, oh my gosh, why did you plea? I could just strangle them, and they get deported. Some of them have gotten back, which is crazy expensive, and some of them just figured out how to learn the language and stay there. Found a relative.
well, an illegal re-entry. So thank you for bringing up the subject of some
Hmm.
of them have made it back.
Hmm.
So the law allows one illegal entry.
Oh, is that right?
So if you have one illegal entry, there are ways to bring you back
I
with
didn't know
waivers
that.
and
Is that through
pardons.
DACA or is that all different?
It's very fact specific. So, if you have a parent who's a citizen or a resident that wants to sponsor you, or you happen to have a fiance who says, "Dear, I really miss you. Let's get married, bring you back."
Mhm,
There are things that can be done. But an illegal re entry
mhm.
is a permanent bar to gaining legal status.
Okay, but you're saying you can get one. How is that
So,
different?
so, so the law allows. So when they came, they were brought illegally
Uh-huh.
as children,
Right.
right?
Uh-huh.
The law will allow you to ask for forgiveness,
Right. Okay.
but
Because you're a baby, kind of like God.
no, it doesn't matter.
Okay,
Even as
I'm
an
thinking it
adult,
from a biblical standpoint.
even if let's say you came when you were 20 years old,
Okay.
and then you got deported,
Uh-huh.
and then you came back illegally. So those are the people when you say people call you up and say, "Oh, I pleaded," and you say, "What do you want me to do now? You pleaded. How can I help you?"
Uh-huh.
It's the same with me when they come to me and say, "Ms. Shiva, I was deported 5 years ago, and now I'm back."
Uh-huh.
And I go, "What do you want me to do now?"
And
Because
there's
there's nothing.
so
I can
let's
do.
go back because it's so important to follow that
Yeah.
line of reasoning because we have so many clients with this situation. And then and a part of the show, and I think in our next segment, I want to talk about the people that are here that have sort of duped citizens into marrying them. And I know I've done some annulments for some clients that you gave me too, into marrying them to become citizens through whatever process that is. And it was fraud. And now that citizen's mad because they were taken advantage of. Can you get rid of that deadbeat that did that to you?
Yeah.
And so we want to talk about that. But I want to go back to so we've got a dreamer. We've got a dreamer that's here
Right.
that came over with their parents that wasn't born on the soil or whatever, which we know that makes people a
Yeah.
citizen. They're here and they've applied for the DACA and now they have gotten in a little trouble. Let's just use the example of a 17-year-old
Mhm.
that got stopped because they weren't doing anything wrong, but their friends that they were with, that had bad influences, had ecstasy, which is not uncommon. And they were arrested for possession of ecstasy because, you're complicit if it's there in the car with you and whatever.
Right.
Now, let's just say that in this scenario, that this kid who's still in high school wants to do a plea. Is that something that would be what are their options? Tell us about that.
Okay, so the war on drugs is basically if you plead guilty to possession of a controlled substance.
Even if it's something as simple as hydrocodone, and it's
Oh
not,
yeah,
and it's not your, and it's just one pill, but it's not yours.
the quantity doesn't matter at all. If it's it's a listed drug.
Mhm, mhm,
Now the only exception to this rule is if what you possessed was marijuana
mhm,
and the quantity was less than 30 grams.
uh-huh.
Now that's important because Texas says 0 to 2 ounces,
Okay.
but 2 ounces is 60 grams. So
Okay.
you have to establish that. Please weigh the marijuana. Establish that it's
Okay.
less than 30 grams,
Okay.
and it's one simple possession. So if you pick up one simple possession
Uh-huh.
of less than 30 grams of marijuana,
Uh-huh.
and you have a way to legalize your status,
Mhm.
you have a parent or a spouse or something,
Mhm.
that can be waived.
Okay, but let me just, and this is me kind of getting into detail because I have so many clients that fall in this category. Two different scenarios. A kid's got a small, he's got over the 2 ounces
Mhm.
of pot on him, and okay, he's got over the 2%, and it's just in his car with him. Is that something that? Oh, if he does a deferred. No, I'm sorry. If he does right now in Houston, that was what I was the direction I was going. In Harris County and in Montgomery County, that if you've got 2 ounces or under, and I think that may be the same mark for federal, you can do a pretrial intervention. So that's in the files that you've pled guilty to it, but it doesn't actually come out on your record. Is that the kind of thing? Or let's say it was over that with a pretrial intervention. You have over that amount, but they still let you do it. Is that something that's going to hurt you because it's in the record? That will still hurt you or
So
not?
if you take pretrial diversion,
Mhm.
it can only be with no finding of guilt. So
Okay, and they won't let
that-
you do that because you have to admit to
right,
it before you can do
exactly.
it. Okay.
So that if so in immigration law, for purposes of a controlled substance, you don't even need a conviction. So if you come to court and
Mhm.
say, "Yeah, I was doing marijuana," that's it. End of story.
If you admit it, but they dismiss it because you've been honest, you're still from a federal standpoint in trouble.
I mean, if someone comes to me and they don't have a conviction, I encourage them to not bring anything up.
Okay,
Because it's like your right to remain
but
silent.
doesn't the federal government in the court situations that you go into, don't they go in if they see that there was an arrest? Don't they look at the record to see if there was an arrest and then actually look at the files because those files will be evident. If they pled, the prosecutor's gonna keep it.
Right. So that's the difference between getting it dismissed and pleading.
Mhm.
Because
Okay.
if it's dismissed, they cannot go behind the record of the dismissal. So if you got something dismissed, the prosecutor cannot come back and say,
Okay.
"Oh, he had it. It was in his pocket. He tested."
Yeah, but in a pretrial intervention, you have to fill out paperwork that goes with the
So
prosecutor.
a pretrial intervention for immigration purposes is not a dismissal. That's a
Right.
criminal
So
process.
it's the same thing. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a cloaked guilty because somewhere in that file you have sworn or you have asserted
Yeah.
that averred that you were guilty, and that can show up, and that's going to be as good as a guilty for federal purposes.
Right.
Okay.
So now the state of California has pretrial intervention with no finding of guilt.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
That's different.
You can
Okay.
say
So
no
if you're going to
contest
smoke your
or-
pot, or probably in Colorado too, because it's not guilty there, you're not going to be pulled over
right.
for it.
But in Texas, I know you're forced to plead.
Okay. Okay. And then the other scenario is if one is the pretrial intervention. I guess for that purpose, that was I'll think of it in a minute. The other prong to that, but that'll still get you in trouble. Okay. So you've got somebody who has come to you, and they're a DACA. We're still sticking with DACA right now.
Okay.
And they've got a let's say, that was the other prong to it. They got pulled over for a DWI, but they weren't drinking. It's a minor. Okay. They got pulled, and this is a real case scenario. I think we may have talked about this years ago. Got pulled over for a DWI, weren't drinking, but their blood was taken because they said, go ahead and take my blood. They were just being dumb. Go if you want it, go ahead and take it. And their blood shows that they had marijuana in their system. So they didn't have possession of it, but it shows that they had a trace of it in their system because it shows up for 30 days in a blood test. Would that be, if they were convicted or they did a pretrial intervention because they had marijuana in their system, which of course they weren't impaired if they just had a little bit of marijuana in the system, but would that be something that would prevent them from, would also be a MAR if they had to do a pretrial intervention because it wasn't possession, but it was in their system? I would
but
think
then
not.
What would be the charge? Would it be DUI? I mean, if they're not
Yes, because
impaired.
well, no, a minor under 21 can't have any detection of alcohol or drugs in their system if they are pulled over. That's the way the DWI laws work with
So then
minors.
it would be a DUI conviction.
Yeah, but they call it DWI because I don't know why.
Okay.
Because the law is driving while,
Under-
but it would be a DUI, whatever
under
you
the
want to
influence,
call it.
yeah.
They've got an impairment because they consider an impairment for a kid under 21 any trace
Per
of
se,
alcohol
okay.
or drugs. So if that was in their system and they had to do a pretrial intervention, just saying, okay, I just want to get rid of it this way, would that still be something that the federal government would consider when there's an excuse for it? I mean, there could be that they were just, maybe it was somebody tainted the brownies, that's odd,
Yeah.
but they didn't actually have possession. Would that still be, I mean, it's kind of obscure, but it happened to me.
Yeah, I was going to say, really, I've never seen that
Mhm.
because, the way the process works is they go from county after they've picked up a conviction, they
Mhm.
go to immigration.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's where I step in and see, first of all, if I can get them a bond
Mm-hmm.
and get secure release. And secondly, do they have any relief?
Okay.
So, you can spend a whole bunch of money and get a bond, come out, and really, other than sticking around for 3 or 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
there's really no relief for you at the end of
But
the
then
day.
that goes to the next question,
Right.
which I've always wanted to know, because these people come to the border, and my understanding is they're let in on I guess
Asylum.
asylum, and then they're supposed to come back for their hearing, but then they never come back.
Right.
Isn't that the same as when you get them out on bond and they're supposed to come back after several years, but they don't? Then they're just like somewhere out in the universe of ICE trying to find them. So really, it's just a matter of being caught. So couldn't they just get the bond and then just take their chances like they all do?
Yeah, so it's not something I recommend.
Yeah, of course, I don't either. But
because,
it's,
because
the reality is that I think that's what happens.
Yeah, and again, the people who get arrested here, like the scenario you're talking about, they have skin in the game. I mean,
Mhm,
they're not the people arriving at the border saying, if I can get my foot across the border,
mhm.
I'll disappear, and whenever they catch up with me,
Yeah.
they'll catch up with me.
Uh-huh.
I would have worked for so many years and made money or whatever.
Right. Right. Uh-huh.
But most of the people who are here, actually, they do want to fight to stay. So they're not.
Once they're here, they've gotten a taste of the good life, I guess.
Well,
and
they're
they've
as
established
American as
themselves.
anyone else. They just
So-
don't have that piece of paper.
Right.
Some of
Right.
them don't even speak Spanish. Some of them have, like you said, never known. And so, but the reason I brought that up is so when they go to immigration, I have to get them a bond. And
Right.
as you know, because you do the same thing, bonds are given for two reasons.
Mhm.
One is you're not a danger to the community.
Right.
So when you get into your car and you are under the influence,
Mhm.
you have the potential to kill people or kill yourself or hurt people or hurt yourself. Now, it's become a big deal in immigration law because if you watch the news, all you hear about is, oh, the guy who, slammed into a car and killed these two nuns like it happened in Colorado. They were
Oh,
here
did nuns get
illegally,
killed in Colorado? Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
changing a tire or something. So, the story wasn't
That's
that
even more
two,
surprising. Nuns were changing tires, but okay.
so, the story was not that two people died,
Uh-huh.
but it was that they were killed by someone who was here illegally.
Yes. Mhm.
So, so judges are very reluctant to give a bond to someone who has the potential to kill other people because then if they give a bond and then the guy goes and does it again, it's their name.
But they
in
do all the
newspaper.
time.
Um, well, DUI and DWI bonds are very hard to get these days.
Is that right? Even
Very
though
hard.
they offer alcohol at restaurants and it's so easy
Much,
to have
much
more than
cheaper
two
to
drinks.
take a taxi. I mean, my husband and I take a cab.
Okay. Oh, and we have got to wind up this particular segment. So we're going to be back. This is the Legal Connection Show. We'll talk to y'all in just a minute.
Don't forget to download the Lone Star Community Radio app from your Google Play or Apple Store. Bring Montgomery County's community radio with you anywhere with your smartphone or tablet. If you are in the Conroe area, tune in on FM. That's Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1. If you are on the computer, bookmark irlonestar.com as your internet radio station. A Lone Star Community Radio. Broadcasting 24/7 from the heart of downtown Conroe, Texas.
The Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service has been dedicated to educating Texans for over a century. In 1915, the Extension Program was established under the federal Smith-Lever Act to deliver university knowledge and agricultural research findings directly to the people. Ever since, AgriLife Extension programs have addressed the emerging issues of the day, serving diverse populations across the state. Texans turn to Extension for solutions in horticulture, agriculture, 4-H and youth, and family and consumer sciences. Extension agents respond not only with answers, but also with resources and services that result in significant returns on investment to boost the economy. Join us Fridays at 1 o'clock for the AgriLife Extension Hour.
Hi, welcome back to the Legal Connection Show. This is Tony, and I'm here with Shiva Gill. She is a licensed immigration attorney here in the Montgomery County, Harris County area, and we are discussing immigration law today. And so, where we left off was we were going to find out about what happens when you've got a client, or I have a client, when we share a client, whoever. When your loved one who has got now an ICE hold for whatever reason has ended up in ICE and they're calling you saying, get me out of here. What happens next?
Okay, so, there's a difference between ICE hold and being sent to immigration. So ICE hold merely means you're in county and you're not going to bond out.
Mm-hmm.
But actually being transferred to immigration is where we come in. Now, we do come in where somebody has an ICE hold because that's when we call a good criminal lawyer like
No,
you.
I'm going to go back just a little bit because a lot of my clients never understand this.
Okay.
If you get arrested and you're not a citizen, sometimes you don't have what's called an ICE hold. Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement it's not on their record that you need to be held. So if you can, and I get this a lot, if you can quickly get out so there's not somebody in custody tagging you to keep you there, if you can quickly bond out with the bond that's set by the state, then you're out of there. You don't have an ICE hold, even if you don't have papers. The problem is if you're there long enough, it gives them the time to find you in the system. And ICE, they run through some sort of there's a series of procedures they go through that you do get tagged, and then that ICE hold hits. And if you bond out with the state's bond, so you pay this money to a bonding company, you pay your $2,500 or whatever it may be for whatever you're charged with, because you get innocent. I mean, people get charged all the time with stuff. You're going even if you're innocent and it's just some bad girlfriend that wants to accuse you of something, you are going to now have to, with an ICE hold, you're going to bond out, but you're immediately going to be held. ICE is going to take you over to the ICE detention center, depending on which location you're at. I'm not even sure if do they still have an ICE detention center over by the airport, the international airport?
The answer is yes, but they've terminated that contract, so it's not going to be there.
Okay, where do they go? Do they go up to the Conroe one now?
To the one in Conroe.
Which I love because I'm up here in Conroe. I don't have to visit them all the way over there by the airport.
It's actually a new outfit called the Montgomery Processing Center. So it's past Joe Corley.
I know, I've been there, and it is beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm like limousine. I feel like I'm driving up to some new with all the TVs in there. They treat you. I'm like, man. When you go to Joe Corley, when you used to go to the international, which Joe Corley was just the federal prison. When you went to the international, it was like this kind of dinky and old. This one is like refreshing. I would not be surprised if visitors didn't have showers. I mean, this is great. But anyway, that's what I was going to ask you, because I know that now I get to visit my clients up real close to here where I live up here in Montgomery County. All right, so when they're there. And I've completely lost my train of thought about what I was asking about.
No, the difference between ICE hold and ICE. So if you get arrested,
oh, that's right. They move you up there, and now you've got to pay that bond. You're stuck.
So,
you're not out.
And people always get confused about
and
that.
do not. So if you have an ICE hold, do not pay a state bond company first, because you're just going to pay
lose
it.
The money.
You're going to lose the money,
and it turns into a warrant.
And they don't tell you. They don't advise you when you go to them trying to get your loved one out. By the way, if you've got an ICE hold, this state bond is not going to do you any good, because you have another hold, the federal hold, that's way more difficult to get out of. So if you have an ICE hold up, call me, call Shiva, call an immigration attorney, because you have to get rid of that bond first. If you get rid of that bond, then you can pay the state bond, and then you'll be free. All right. Now, tell us about the ICE bond.
So the ICE bond is completely different from a criminal bond. And I say that because a lot of people come to me and say, no, I've already paid the bond. Well, the bond you've paid was to Montgomery County or Harris County. It's not honored by immigration. So then now you're in immigration, and then now an immigration lawyer has to go and explain to the judge why you should be granted a bond.
Right.
So I have to go and say, Your Honor, he's not a danger to the community because he was arrested for shoplifting. Okay. Now, significantly harder if he had 0.15 blood alcohol level, and he was involved in a wreck, and he was, or he was fallen asleep on the side of the highway or at a traffic light. I've seen that.
Right.
So assuming that, your facts aren't too egregious, then we can hopefully clear that hurdle.
Okay.
Then the second hurdle is, well, if he does bond out, the judge will say, counsel, what relief is he seeking? And if he's seeking what is called speculative relief, he has no family ties, he doesn't have a wife here, he has no children born here, he's never paid taxes, he has no property, he's living with 3 other guys, can't prove that he has an address.
You described all my clients.
Right. So it makes it really hard for me to say, well, if you let him out, this is his way to fix his papers. Contrast that with someone who came here as a child, managed to get a high school diploma, has been working, has, children born here, maybe has siblings born
Very
here.
strong ties to the community.
Very strong ties to the
and
community.
does it matter to the judge that they have no place to go because they've never lived in the country of their, origin? You would think the judge would be sympathetic because they don't even speak the language, or if they do, it's minimal.
The judge can only give you relief that is by law. So you can't say, I broke the law by coming illegally.
Even though you're only
and
one.
I don't speak Spanish. So, so what I'm saying is that the law allows you to seek relief under certain circumstances.
Okay.
So and there are many, many circumstances.
And we're going to get into that in the next
Right.
question, but I wanted to finish the bond
Right.
because when the first thing, and I want to go back just a little bit because this is so confusing. I know I don't even know this. They call you and they're calling you from ICE, or their family calls you. My loved one is in ICE. What do I do now? So what is the very next step? Do you call the ICE facility as an immigration attorney and say, I've got someone there, I represent them, or do you go visit them and get representation, or what's the next step so that you can set up
Right.
the bond hearing and get with them and go forward?
Okay, so I don't even have to set up a bond hearing
Mhm.
because they're automatically put on a judge's calendar at the very end.
Okay.
So, they get the next available slot.
Okay.
Because in the old days, now let me back up. So if this is your first illegal entry,
hmm
now we do get people who have been deported, come back, and now are back in ICE custody.
Right.
They won't get to see a judge, and I cannot get them a bond.
Oh,
So
really?
that's
Not at all?
End of story. End of story.
That happens a lot.
So they take, it's called a reinstatement. They take
Uh-huh.
the previous order of deportation
Uh-huh.
and reinstate it.
Oh, and they
Okay.
just get deported again. You can't
They
even-
just get
under
paid.
no circumstances can you get them bond. What if they got married when they came back?
It makes no difference.
Really?
So if you, like I had said before, if you have an illegal re-entry,
Mhm.
you're in very big trouble.
Okay. And I will just say that I get that a lot. And what they end up doing is, and I advise them just as you've advised me to tell them, we can't get you a bond. You're just going to have to do, it's not even a voluntary deportation. You're going to be deported. So just get on the next, if you're from Mexico, you're going quick. And if you're from Honduras, you're going to wait a little bit longer
Yeah, a
because
couple of weeks,
but what happens is they almost happily and almost accept it that they're going to go. And because they've known, they've run through this before.
yeah.
And they pay a fortune to come back. They get the coyotes, and they're like they've tried everything within their power to get back legally, and they can't once they're deported. And because I've tried with that too, and we'll go over that. But then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, I'm back," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, how did you get back?" They will pay. It's usually, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's usually between $7,000 and maybe $12,000 per person, depending on if you're a guy or a girl. You need protection because they have to pay the drug cartel. They all tell me the same thing. You cannot do it for less than that. You can try, but you'll get stopped. Or
Well, these days the price has gone up between 20
Way.
and 30
yeah, really,
because they're catching a lot more people at the border.
yeah.
And
And that wall is going to kill it. I mean, they're going to be
assuming
impossible.
we get a wall.
But
Oh,
that all being
oh.
said, so they go in and they're getting. Let's assume that they get the hearing automatically set because they're DACA and they've never been deported before.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So what happens next?
So that's
Let me
when-
ask you this: if you get an immigration attorney, can you get that set earlier if an attorney's involved, or is it just automatic?
It's these days it's pretty difficult because they are catching people left and right. So the judges are,
It's a
really
sanctuary
busy.
city. I'm just
Yeah.
stunned. I kept hearing Harris County was a sanctuary city, and you didn't have anything to worry
I
about.
really don't know under what definition they call it that because really there is no sanctuary.
Okay.
Because the 287G program, which is where they have the ICE agents at the jail,
hmm
that is not a sanctuary.
And
city.
287G, is that a federal program?
It's a federal program.
But it's something that where they're working with the county so that
With
they can
local
be
law
there.
enforcement.
Okay.
And,
And they
so,
have that at Harris. Do they have it all the counties in the Houston general area or, that you know of?
Yeah, I would think so. I know that there was this whole confusion with Austin, the sheriff of Austin, Sally Gonzalez, or
Uh-huh. Right.
whatever her name.
Mhm.
She said, "We're not going to honor ICE detainers. We're not going to
Okay.
cooperate with
Mhm.
them."
So maybe they don't have the
But that's
287G
when
program.
SB 4 got passed by Governor Abbott, which is, if you refuse to cooperate with, ICE, then
You're not going to get
you
funding.
will be, no, you can go to
Oh.
prison as a
Oh.
law enforcement
Oh, so
officer.
Austin now has that program. Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah. So it's
Okay.
there is really no such thing as sanctuary
Okay.
in the
Okay.
state of Texas.
Because it died down. I stopped hearing about all that stuff going on in Austin like really quick. I had no idea. That's really interesting. Okay, so let's just say that we're going to look at the more lenient situation where you've got a DACA kid that got arrested because they had, they were their buddies were drinking or they got pulled over or whatever the case may be, and now they're in ICE. Now that's the next. I guess to kind of deviate just a little bit, if you've got a kid, do they go to a different ICE facility or do they go to the same one as the adults?
So under immigration laws, you're a minor if you're under 18.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're under 18, they do have, sort of these shelter type of programs.
Okay.
But when you talk about someone who was their buddies were drinking, I mean, no one's going to get convicted if their buddies were drinking.
Right. Well,
So-
this is where the police are mad because they're up to no good, and they arrest them for whatever they can stick them with.
Right.
And if they don't have anything else, they'll say, because I get this not all the time, but I'm just recalling the few that I've had. Assault of a police officer. That's a throwdown. That if they tried to resist or pull back,
Yeah.
then they're going to get that, and they get hit with, and they get arrested, and then everything snowballs out of control. So, kids, do not be out between midnight and 6 with your buddies in a car trying to be an adult, because the policeman is going to be walking down there with their little stick like you see in the movies, even though they don't really have one, whatever that thing's called. And if you're not nice, they're going to arrest you, and you're going to be calling us. And you may end up in one of these shelters, because it's always
Yeah.
forcing around that gets them in trouble.
But that's where you would go to work, and hopefully they have dash cams,
Which I
and
did.
body cams,
In all
and-
these situations.
Yeah.
And they weren't in an ICE facility, as I recall, the ones that I did. They were released because they were in high school, and the facility was different. It was just, I don't remember, but
yeah, they do have these.
it was like some people.
Yeah,
it wasn't even a facility. They were
Right.
released to somebody.
but so a lot of times I don't even have to go through a bond process for them. The only time I've seen them treating people under 18, very cruelly, is if they happen to be members of a gang, or that there's some suspicion, or they
Okay.
have. So that's
Which
a
are not the
whole
clients we
other-
ever have that we share, because everybody you've ever asked me to help get their cases dismissed
Yeah.
have been like these pristine, wonderful,
kids,
clean
yeah.
cut, wearing the bow tie, working at the ice cream shop, 5
Yeah.
jobs, kind of making straight A's at school kind of guys. So,
So doing what I do,
but
for
still
the-
not legal citizens.
For the most part, I see what I call the 6 deadly sins.
Mhm.
So if it's guys, it's going to be beating up your wife.
Mhm.
It's going to be
Or them asserting that you did
uh,
because they're mad at you for cheating.
or bar fights,
Mhm.
or DWI, or possession of a controlled substance.
Yes. Mhm.
If it's women, it's going to be DWI,
Mm-hmm.
possession of a controlled substance, shoplifting.
Yes.
Oh my God, I wish I had a dollar.
Women are
for-
little klepto.
And the
What is
last
up with that?
one is prostitution. I am amazed
Yes.
at how many girls pick up a prostitution.
And
shop.
that's almost kind of biblical, because in the old days that was the only way you could survive, and it's so easy and to get money doing that. I didn't realize it was that prevalent with people that were not legal here because they can't get jobs. It's not like ones like we can just apply for without having your ID and stuff.
I have many clients who pleaded guilty to prostitution.
And because they don't have their ID, and they come over with paying their $8,000 to $10,000, and then I think we had a case together not too long ago, and I think it was a client you gave me. I can't remember. It may not have been, where the girl was being held. A bunch of girls were brought up here under the pretense, for paying thousands of dollars of getting jobs and being legal. They were told this from their other countries, and they got here and were basically held hostage in these houses by the coyotes that brought them up here. And I think they ultimately, through U visas, they were ultimately released because they were being made to be prostitutes. It was trafficking. It was literally
human
trafficking.
TVs.
It had to do, but that only happened once, and I couldn't believe how it really happened. I just thought it was in the movies, but it was serious, and it really did happen. We could not get the prosecutors to believe us, no matter what. And we finally had to be like, "We're not kidding. Look at this evidence. Look at and
Well, if that happens again, let me know, because I actually have worked a great deal with the FBI's human trafficking
okay,
task
good
force.
to know.
And they will certify you for a trafficking visa
Oh,
if you
really?
can cooperate with them
I
in
did not
locking
know
up the
that.
pimps. Yeah.
We just fought forever because these people, I couldn't get the witnesses to come forward on the other people that were charged with whatever it was. I can't remember all the details of it now. I just remember it was a really, really bad thing where they kept telling me, look, this human trafficking going on here. We can't even leave the house. Oh, that's what it was. The guy got arrested for at a Mexican restaurant where he worked, and it was because they were all being held hostage, and the women couldn't leave. They were all being sort of blackmailed, and it all came out. And I think we got them all off ultimately, one way or the other, but it was a difficult situation.
Yeah.
But okay, that's
But
good to know.
Yeah, that's a good one. If you have the facts to put some bad guys away,
Yeah, I was
FBI wants to
determined to
listen.
get them out. I didn't know what to do. We got it resolved, but it would have been a lot easier if we could just get the prosecutors to believe us. I don't know why they weren't believing us. It was really frustrating. Okay, so we go down there. The kid, you got the bond. They're automatically set for the Rolodex or whatever.
Which is a couple of weeks these days.
Okay.
Not too long.
Whether it be in ICE or with the families or whatever for the bond. And then what happens next? Someone calls
So,
you, or
yeah,
do you
so-
find out about it because we're on the Rolodex bond and you're an appointed, or how does that work?
No, there is no right to an attorney because
right? Okay.
immigration is civil proceedings.
Okay.
They're not criminal proceedings. So there's no
Okay.
Sixth Amendment right to
Mhm.
counsel. But usually, the family finds me either through a criminal lawyer that
Mhm.
says, you've got your kid's got an ice hole, or through word of mouth. I actually have my 14th family member
Mm-hmm.
whose family came to me for the 14th one. So they never go anywhere in the last 100 years I've been doing this. So they just come straight to me. But then I have to go file a motion for a bond
Uh-huh.
with the immigration court,
Okay.
outlining the reasons why this person should
Okay.
get a bond.
And the next question
Yeah.
is, and it probably kind of segues into what are the ways that you can stay in America, because your bond would probably relate to that. But what are the
Yeah, so the bond really relates to release from custody.
Okay. So what are the best arguments to release somebody under your 6 deadly sins from custody that work, and what does it usually cost, and that kind of thing?
Okay, so of course the two main reasons are he or she is not a danger to the community,
Mhm.
and he or she has a pathway to legalization.
Okay.
So if danger to the community compares shoplifting to 0.15 blood alcohol level for.
Mhm.
So that's the challenge for me. So if they're caught lifting a blouse at Macy's,
Mhm.
it's a horrible crime, it's immoral. The Bible tells us not to steal. But Your Honor, she's really not a danger to the
Mhm.
community. She's learned her lesson.
We had a common client that it was basically that she just had mental illness, basically.
Right,
And,
right.
and she's a
yeah,
klepto because when she gets tense, she has to go, steal from Walmart.
yeah.
So it worked. I couldn't believe it worked.
But
it
on
did.
that subject, mental illness is not something we bring up in court,
Okay.
at least for the bond, because
And it is what I bring on my side. So we're
right,
a little
right.
different there.
So mental illness is an independent grounds of inadmissibility, because we certainly don't want crazy people in our country.
Okay.
So when you bring that up, then
Oh, you would
there's
think
a
they'd be
whole-
lenient if they had mental illness.
Again, you
Huh.
don't think about immigration in terms of criminal
Okay.
law.
Okay.
So what is a huge sympathy factor at criminal court is actually the judge will say, why should I let this person with mental illness stay in our country?
Okay.
Okay. So I have to establish you're not a danger to the community.
Uh-huh.
And I also have to establish that if released, this person has at least a chance of staying. So if
Okay.
they have, so one of the things is it's called cancellation of removal
Mm-hmm.
for non-permanent residents. So cancellation is the politically correct word for deportation. So it's
Okay.
cancellation or deportation.
Okay.
And there are 4 things again that I have to establish. One is I've been here for more than 10 years
Okay.
of uninterrupted physical presence.
Okay.
I have a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident, parent, spouse, or children.
Okay.
Number 3, I have good moral character.
Uh-huh.
And so there's a statutory bar for that. So even though for example, if you have a drug conviction,
Mm-hmm.
that's a statutory bar to showing good moral character.
Right.
I
Okay.
can never show it.
Okay.
So people say, well, it was only 1 cigarette, it was only 2 grams of marijuana, it was only a gram of cocaine. Sorry, that is a statutory bar. It's
Okay.
a statutory bar.
Okay.
to
Let me,
good-
you told me 4 reasons, and I only
so
got
that's the
2.
third reason.
Oh, third.
Good
It's-
moral
okay, the good character, and not having the drugs, or something. Then not having that conviction that shows that at one time in the life you made a mistake, so you're now condemned from the federal purview.
It's by
as bad.
law. By law, you
Okay.
cannot show. So
Okay.
that if you have a drug conviction, I can never get you a bond.
Okay.
Okay. And the last one is that I can show that deporting me will cause hardship to my citizen or resident parent, spouse, or child.
Do you need all 4 of those? It's not an R, but all 4.
So for bond purposes, we don't have to show hardship.
Uh huh.
because that's a factual determination at a trial.
Okay, right.
But of course, hardship is presumed
Uh-huh.
if you have citizen family.
Right.
So in other words, if you have,
That chain migration kind of thing or whatever.
Well, not only that, but if you're facing deportation and you're married to a citizen and your parent is a resident and you have 3 citizen-born children,
Uh-huh.
if you're deported, they will suffer economically.
Right, right, right.
They will certainly suffer emotionally.
Mhm.
They'll miss you, they love you, blah, blah. And, last, of course, the winning argument always is medical hardship. So if your children have ADD or learning disabilities or some horrible medical condition
Mhm.
or,
Yeah, so you're just saying you need all 4 of these to get a bond, but you
I
don't.
need 3 to get a
Oh,
bond
you need 3. Okay,
because
got
the
it.
4th one is presumed.
Okay, but you're saying that the one that you can't ever have is the lack of good moral character.
Right.
So if you have a drug conviction, you can't get them a bond?
Nope.
That just means they have to wait until trial, I guess? Or is there a way?
So here's where the problem comes in. So, even there is no trial because to get cancellation of deportation,
Mhm.
you must show all 4 things.
Uh-huh.
So you might be able to show I've been here for 10 years. You might be able to show that you have citizen
Right,
parents,
right.
foster children,
Uh-huh.
but you cannot show good moral character because there's a statutory bar.
So I'm confused. You're telling me that if anybody's just got that one DWI,
No, not DWI.
drug.
Drugs.
It has to be drugs. Okay, so because I know
Drugs
I have.
are more than one crime involving moral
So
turpitude.
they made the mistake of doing a deferred adjudication, way back in the day, on possession of some degree of cocaine, one of the bad ones,
Right.
and that deferred, so it's not on the record. That's enough that you could never get them a bond under any circumstance.
Correct. Because for purposes of immigration law, that conviction is like your skin. Like you
Okay.
can't get rid of your skin.
So what do you tell the family? He's just got to go. Sorry, I can't give him a
Yeah.
bond.
Yes, but what is even more egregious is there are lawyers who will take their money and then go to
Yeah.
court, and the judge will say, counsel, he has a statutory bar to good moral character. He
Okay.
has no
Yeah,
relief.
They do it all the time. I know that because my clients are saying, "Oh, don't worry, I was told this." Oh, and thinking I'm a bad attorney when I'm telling them things because they're being told something else, and then they find
Yeah.
out, and the hard way because they lose thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
So I
to
have people that come to
unethical
me
attorneys.
and say,
Mhm.
can you get him a bond? When they tell me everything, I say, no, he's not going to get a bond.
Okay.
Don't waste your money. He needs that money to start a new life in Mexico or Honduras or whatever.
Okay.
And then they'll say, well, so-and-so said I can get him a bond. Give me $2,000.
Okay.
And I say, you know what? Why don't you give me 1,000? Because you only lose 1,000, but you still won't get a bond. But it's
They
a
probably
joke.
give it to you.
No,
you-
I don't take it. I joke about it. So I won't take money.
Yeah, if you
Because
can't do it.
I
That's the same.
cannot-
I wouldn't either.
But I cannot go to court because the judges respect us.
Okay, that's really interesting in this fact that I didn't know that they didn't get court appointments. That was something because to me it seems criminal, so it must be criminal. It's not a civil
There's
because
no right
because
to
they all
it.
say I get the same rights as a citizen when you're here, and it seems criminal if you're being deported because you're being incarcerated. How is that not criminal when they're holding you without your ability to
Right.
voluntarily leave?
Sadly, in immigration court, one of the advisals that's given is you have the right to an attorney at your own expense.
We're going to wrap up this segment because we have another program where we're going to continue this. But Shiva Gill is with us today. We've talked about immigration law. This is the Legal Connection Show with Tony and Cheryl and our guest Shiva Gill. You can listen to us at irlonestar.com. We're at FM 104.5, FM 106.1. Visit our Facebook page, and we're going to hopefully see you next week. And remember, most importantly, you serve God by serving others. And we will see you next week at Tuesday from 12 to noon. From noon to 1. Thank you.